In this video, we're gonna create 4 unique SaaS animations from scratch in After Effects. By the end of this video, you will learn the simplest way to create clean SaaS explainer motion graphics from basic text transitions to more complex animations like this one. We'll go through the entire process step by step so you can easily recreate these animations for your own SaaS videos or clients' projects. With that in mind, let's dive in. So, let's start with the first scene. As always, we're gonna create 1920 by 1080 composition and call it Scene 1. And to create our main background, I will right click, create a new solid layer and call it BG, which is our main background. But instead of using flat white background, we can make it look more aesthetic by using 4-color gradient effect. Now I'm gonna set the first and second color to white. Third and the last color is bright blue. By using the color picker tool, we can easily copy the third color and paste it for the fourth color as well. To make it even look much better, let's move closer these white dots to each other on the scene and we'll move the blue color positions outside of the scene just like that. Awesome. So let's go ahead and start to create our buttons. First of all, I will grab the rounded rectangle tool, change the fill color and choose high contrast blue, and don't forget to turn off the stroke. To make sure everything is aligned, let's open the title and action safeguards and we'll create a rounded rectangle shape layer, something like this. After centering the anchor point and align it to the center of the scene, I will duplicate it twice by pressing Command+D, but if you are Windows user, it is Ctrl+D, and place them right here on the scene, just like that. And finally, I will change the first shape layer color and set it to light gray color, so this will represent the button is closed and blue color means open. Perfect. With this in mind, let's grab the ellipse tool, set its color to white, and we'll create a circle shape layer right here on the scene, just like that. After renaming this layer and call it button 1, let's duplicate it by hitting Command D, place it on the second shape layer, then duplicate it one more time and place it right here on the scene, just like that. Now we basically finished up our button settings, but we have one more thing to do. So let's grab the rounded rectangle tool and create a big rectangle on the scene. Then center its anchor point and align it to the scene like so. Since it's our background, let's grab that layer and place it right below of the button layers on the timeline and rename it as Shape Background. After that, let's open its fill color settings and choose a more gray color, then turn on the stroke, set its strokes color to white, and finally set its stroke width to 5. Then we'll go to the effects panel and add a drop shadow effect to our background. We're gonna set the shadow opacity to 10%, shadow distance to 1, and shadow softness to 230. Now it is looking much better. Awesome. Now I wanna add some noisy bluish shadow as well, which is pretty effective. And to do that, let's create a circle shape layer around here on the scene. Then I will turn off the stroke, open the fill color settings, and select a light blue color, something like this. Let's place this shape layer between the background and the button layers on the timeline, and to make it look more smoother, let's go to the effects panel and add Gaussian blur effect to our shape layer. After setting the blurriness amount to 300 and turn off the repeat edge pixel option, here is how it looks. So let's go ahead and add noise effect to make it look more natural. We're gonna set the noise amount to 12% and uncheck the use color option, and this will give us more characteristic look. Now as you can see, our design is almost done, but before adding any keyframe, let's also add drop shadow effect to the buttons and set the opacity to 12%, distance to 2, and softness value is 27%. After copy and pasting a drop shadow effect to the other buttons, we can now start to add motion to our design. So first of all, I'm gonna zoom into our timeline and move the time indicator at the 5th frame. Then I will change the first button position, place to left, and add a keyframe. We'll keep the second button position as it is and add a keyframe as well. After that, we'll open the first and second button background settings and add a keyframe for its fill color. So when it's blue, the button is open, when it's gray, it is closed. Then we'll move the time indicator to around second 1 and change the first 2 buttons positions and the colors to opposite way. 10 frames later, let's add keyframes to the layer that we changed so they can stop for a moment instead of acting immediately. Then after moving the time indicator to 20 frames later on the timeline, this time we'll change the second and the third button positions just like that. Let's also not forget to change their fill color inside the shape layer settings on the timeline, so the second one will be blue and the third one is going to be gray. Then 9 frames later, I will move the playhead and add a keyframe to the layers that we changed. And about 24 frames later, we'll do the same movement in opposite way, which means the second and the third buttons will move the opposite side and the background colors will change as well. As always, we're gonna copy the last keyframes and paste them about 9 frames later. And finally, about 24 frames later, I'm going to move all 3 buttons to the opposite side and change their background colors with each other, basically using the color picker tool. And this is basically how it looks so far. So let's go ahead and select all the keyframes that we created on the timeline, right click, go to the keyframe assistant and convert them to easy ease. Then we'll open the graph editor and make it much smoother by adjusting the graph speed like this. This will make our motion faster and smoother, just like we want. So let's go ahead and create a new 1920 by 1080 composition and call it scene 2. Instead of creating the background from scratch, I will basically copy our background that we created for the first scene and paste it to our new composition. Now I will grab the type tool, choose Inter Bold font, set the font size to 95 and write 4. Let's enter the anchor point and place the text layer at the center of the scene. Then I'm gonna duplicate that layer, write editors, and place it right side of the 4. So the main idea is the second word is going to move up and disappear, and instead of another new word will come in from the bottom. And to do this, we're gonna duplicate the editor's text, place it down here, and write the next word, which is creators. The important thing is that we need to make sure the position difference between each word is equal. So I'm gonna add plus 120 value to the next layer's Y position every time. In this case, we're gonna click the Y position value and type plus 120 for this layer. So let's duplicate the text layer again and change the text to freelancer and add plus 120 to its Y position. So I'm gonna create 4 more text layers by duplicating the last one and write client projects, viral videos, SaaS animations, and everything so they appear one below another like this. Awesome. So let's go ahead and create a new null object on the timeline, then select all the text layers except 4 and link them to our null object so we can control all these words from one place easily. Then we're gonna move the time indicator at the second one, add a position keyframe and go back to frame 6. And I will add plus 120 to the null object's Y position value so it will be exactly aligned with the 4. Now let's move the playhead right here on the timeline, add a position keyframe to the null object, and 10 frames later type plus 120 to the position value as we did before. And with a 5 frame gap, add a keyframe, and 10 frames later we'll do the same thing so we can move the next word up on the screen. And we'll repeat the same process for the rest of the words one by one. Add a position keyframe to the null object, and 10 frames later add plus 120 to its Y position value. Also give a 5 frame gap between each movement. So when this process is done, all the words will move from down to up, which is exactly what we want. By doing that, I will select all the keyframes and convert them to easy ease, and inside the graph editor, I will set the position speed to around 80% for each movement, like so. I will also turn on the motion blur for each layer, and here is how it looks so far. Perfect. Now it's time to mask our text layers. Instead of masking them one by one, we can select all the text layers along with the null layer, right click and pre-compose them. While the pre-comp layer is selected, I will grab the pen tool from the toolbar and mask only this part, just like that. So we'll see the words one by one with the position movement inside the mask. After that, I'm gonna link the pre-comp layer to the text layer on the left side, which is 4. Now we are ready to make this work perfectly. First of all, let's turn on the title and action safeguards, move the time indicator to frame 3 and add the position keyframe while the text layer is in the center of the scene. Then at the frame 21, we're gonna move them at the center of the scene, just like that. Let's select these keyframes and convert them to easy ease, and inside of the graph editor, we'll set the speed graph like this, so the motion will start much faster and slows down more smoothly between those two keyframes. And here's how it looks so far. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and change the text color. Instead of using straight black, we can make it look much better by using the gradient ramp effect on our text. We're gonna place the first color point on the left side and the other point on the right side. I'll change the first color and use a navy blue instead of black. And for the second color, let's copy and paste the first color and increase the brightness to get a bright blue. After that, it will look like this. And finally, we're gonna create a new null object and link the text layer on the right side to the null object. Let's add a position and a scale keyframe at the first frame on the timeline and press U on the keyboard to only see these two keyframes. And at the second for frame 20, which is when the scene is finished, I will set the scale value to 110% and move them to the left side on the scene. So it will look like this. After that, I will add a position keyframe to our text layer on the left side before the last word appears. Then about 1 second later, move it to the left until it is in the center of the scene, like so. And once you set the graph editor like this is the final result of our scene. With this in mind, we finished this one. Now let's go ahead and create our third animation. I'm gonna create a 1920 by 1080 composition and call it scene 3. We're gonna use the same background, so I will copy the background layer from the scene 2 composition and paste it to our new composition. Now I'm gonna grab the rounded rectangle tool and create a new shape layer on the scene like so. Let's set the roundness amount to 60, change its fill color to white and place the shape layer around here on the scene. So let's start filling it in. First of all, I will grab the type tool, write invoice, set the font size to 80 and place it on the top left side of our shape layer. Then I'm gonna duplicate the text layer and write an invoice number, which is 0062, change the font to inter semi-bold, set the font size to 40 and place it on the right side of the shape layer. After that, I will duplicate the invoice text layer and type a random price. It can be $1,200, and to make it thinner, I will replace the font with intermedium, set the font size to 70 and finally replace the color with gray like so. So far so good, and now it's time to design the rest of the shape layer. So let's grab the rounded rectangle tool and set the fill color to something like bluish gray. Then I'm gonna create two rounded rectangle shape layers inside the scene, and instead of pointy corners we can set the roundness amount to 10 so it will look like this. To make sure they are aligned each other, we can open the ruler by hitting Command R on the keyboard. And we're gonna create one more rectangle shape, but this time it's gonna be much bigger. Let's not forget to set the roundness amount to 10 and place it right here on the scene. Then I will add one more guideline and place it here and create one more rounded rectangle shape layer. But this time it's gonna be much thinner to fit right here on the scene. After adjusting its roundness amount to 10, this is how it looks so far. By doing that, let's go ahead and create the buttons. To do this, we'll grab the rounded rectangle tool and create a new shape layer right here on the scene. I will set the roundness amount to 50, duplicate it to right side of the shape layer and change its fill color to black. Now let's write the first button's text, which is customize, change its color to more darker gray, set its font size to around 22 and place it at the center of the first button like so. For the second button, I'm gonna duplicate the text that we just created, place it at the center of the second button, write continue instead of customize and change its color to white to make it more visible and place it right here. After finishing the button designs, now we can add a couple more stuff to our design. First of all, let's grab the pen tool, turn off its fill color, turn on the stroke, set its color to gray and adjust the stroke width to 3. Now let's zoom in our scene and we're gonna draw a line on top of the number, something like this. While we are already working on this layer, let's quickly create its opening animation. I'm gonna zoom in on our timeline and move the line shape layer that we just created to frame 12. Then we'll open the shape layer settings, click add and select trim paths. Now if we play the end amount, we can basically open our line from left, which is what we want. So let's add a keyframe while the playhead is here and set the end amount to 0. Then move the playhead to the 10th frame later and set the end amount to 100% so we can get this result. Perfect. Now I'm gonna create one more rounded shape layer, set its roundness value to 15 and as the color I will go with a bright blue. And inside it we'll write a discounted price, which is $900, and place it inside the shape layer. To control them more easily, we'll select these layers, right click and pre-compose them. Before adding the opener animation, I will set the timing for when it shows up, which is frame 20, and center its anchor point, which is really important. I will use Animation Composer plugin from Mr. Horse. You can find the link in description. It's totally free and easy to set up. So open Animation Composer, go to Motion Presets, click the 2D transition folder and apply the overshoot scale opener animation. This will give us a smooth opener animation for the discount. By doing that, we basically finished the design, so let's go ahead and duplicate it 5 more times. First of all, we'll select all the layers and copy them by hitting Ctrl D, right click and pre-comp the selected layers and call it 1. I'm gonna repeat the same process until I get the 5 pre-comp layers that are the same as each other. Now let's select all these pre-comp layers and place them down a little bit on the scene, then right click, create a new null object and connect all these pre-comp layers to the null object. Then I will move the time indicator right here on the timeline and add a position and scale keyframes to the null object. If you hit U on the keyboard, you can see just these keyframes. And at the first frame, I will set the scale value to 150 and place them lower in the scene just like this. Let's select all the keyframes, right click and convert them to easy ease, and inside of the graph editor, adjust the position and scale speed graphs so the motion starts faster and then slowly settles at the center of the scene. But we are still not seeing the other pre-comps, so let's also place them around the scene. First of all, we need to place their anchor points a little bit lower one by one, otherwise it can be really hard to control them. Then select these pre-comps, except the first one, and add position, scale, and rotation keyframes at the first frame and press U to see them. After moving the playhead to the where the null object's motion is done, we'll set the second pre-comp layer's rotation to -10, then the scale to 90%, and then place it on the left side on the scene, just like that. Then for the third pre-comp layer, I will set the rotation to +10, then scale to 90% and place it on the right side of the scene. And for the fourth layer, I will place it on the left side on the scene, set its scale value to 70% and adjust the rotation to -20 so it will look like it is farther behind in the scene. And finally, for the fifth pre-comp layer, we'll set the scale amount to 80 and the rotation to 20 and place it on the right side of the scene like so. Let's go ahead and select all these keyframes and convert them to easy ease, and inside of the graph editor, we'll adjust the keyframe speed to make the motion smoother. And here is how it looks so far. To give some depth between the layers, I'm gonna add drop shadow effect. Adjust the shadow color to something like bluish gray, set the opacity to 100%, distance to 2 and the softness to 300, and apply the same effect to the other layers as well. Let's also add a Gaussian blur effect, starting from the first pre-comp layer, set the blur amount to 12, add a keyframe at the first frame, and 20 frames later set it to 0. And copy it to the second and the third pre-comp layer as well. For the last two layers, which are the smallest and the farthest ones, I will also add a Gaussian blur effect, but this time set the blurriness amount to 8, no keyframes needed. Perfect. Now we can add one more small detail to our scene, so I will grab the rounded rectangle tool, keep the blue color as it is, and create a rectangle tool right here on the scene. After setting the roundness amount to 20, we're gonna write fast results inside of the scene, set the font size to 45 and place it inside of the shape layer like so. Then we'll select the ellipse tool, set the fill color to white and create a small circle shape layer on the left side of the rectangle. Maybe we can give some glow to its background, and to do this we'll duplicate the circle on the timeline and add a Gaussian blur effect to it. And if you turn off the repeat edge pixels option, you can get this nice glow effect. Perfect. Now I'm gonna add some motion to it, but before that, let's connect the first three layers to the blue rectangle shape layer. Let's add position and scale keyframes at second one, frame 20, set the scale amount to 90% and place it around here on the scene. Then move the playhead to 1 second later, move the shape layer to the right and set back the scale value to 100%. I'm gonna start all these layers right here on the scene since we don't need them at the start. And then, as always, we'll select the keyframes, convert them to easy ease and make the motion smoother by adjusting the graph speed, and here is how it looks. And finally, I'm gonna add one more thing, which is a drop shadow for the blue shape layer. So let's apply to it. Set the shadow color to blue, set the distance amount to 55 and softness to 130. And with this in mind, our scene is completed. And now guys, it's time to create our final scene. As always, let's create a new 1920 by 1080 composition, call it scene 4, and copy and paste the background layer that we just created from the other composition. Then I'm gonna create a rounded rectangle shape layer at the center of the scene, adjust its roundness value to 20, then add a drop shadow effect and set the shadow opacity to 20, distance also 20, and the softness value is 110. Then we're gonna grab the type tool and write 24/7 with a black color, select entire regular font and set its font size to 40. To make sure everything is aligned to each other, I will open the rulers by hitting the Command plus R, open the ruler and create a new guideline right here on the scene. Then I'm gonna grab the type tool again and write online community. Change its color to gray, set its font size to 20 and place it right below the first text on the scene. Now it's time to add some profile photos from the assets folder. You can find all the assets in the link below and import these profile photos into our timeline. So let's go ahead and mask the first photo with the ellipse tool to make it a circle, and then copy and paste the mask onto the other ones as well. We can also play with the mask expansion amount to make it a perfect circle. And we're gonna select these layers, set their scale amount to 65 and carefully place them on the left side of the shape layer like so. Awesome. By doing that, we've finished the left side of the shape layer. For the right side, first of all, I'm gonna grab the ellipse tool, change its fill color and choose a light blue color and create a circle shape layer around here on the scene. Then I'm gonna open the effects and presets panel and add Gaussian blur effect to our shape layer. I will uncheck the repeat edge pixels option and set the blurriness value to 150. To make it look more natural, I will also add a noise effect, uncheck the use color noise, set the noise amount to 12 and finally set its opacity to 30%. Next, we're gonna grab the type tool, add a question mark, set the font color to a light blue, choose Inter semi-bold font and the font size to around 100. Let's zoom into our scene and duplicate the question marks 2 more times and place the side by side with some rotation for these 2 question marks. With that in mind, I'm also gonna apply a wiggle effect for the question marks, adjust the wiggle speed to 3 and duplicate the wiggle effect for the other question marks. This way, they will slowly shake like this in the scene. So we just finished up the first panel designing, and before moving forward to control all these layers in one place, I will create a new null object and connect all of them except the background layer. After that, when I'm at the second one, frame 20, I will add a scale and position keyframes to the null object. Press U to see both keyframes and then move the time indicator to the first frame, set the scale value to 200 and move them down until they are out of the scene. Then I'm gonna move the time indicator at the second tree and place them up like this. By doing that, we can now design the rest of the scene at the bottom. So I'm gonna grab the rectangle tool, make its fill color to white and create a square about right here on the scene. After centering its anchor point, I will adjust its rotation to 45 degrees and align it vertically at the center of the scene. Then I'm gonna copy the drop shadow effect that we created for the rectangle shape layer before and paste to it. So far so good. Now let's go ahead and open the assets folder and import these vector icons to our timeline. This will be inside of the square shape layer, and to do this, I will set its scale amount to 15 and place it right here. To change its color, I will add change the color effect, set the first color to black, second color to something like dark turquoise, and adjust the change settings to hue, lightness and saturation. Then I will quickly create a rounded shape layer right here on the scene, set its roundness amount to 20, and then I'm gonna duplicate the shape layer and place it right below on the original one like so. Then I will copy the drop shadow effect to the previous shape layer and apply it to these shape layers as well. Awesome. Now we are ready to fill them up. First of all, I'm gonna create a new rounded shape layer like this and set its roundness value to 10. After setting its scale amount to 75 and placing it on the left side of the shape layer, I will change its fill color and make it light blue and then duplicate it for the other shape layer as well. So I'm gonna open the assets file and import the education vector icon to our timeline, place it inside of the box and apply change the color effects by copying the previous vector logo. Then we'll import the next vector icon and I'm only gonna use this part of it. So I will mask it, place it right here and also apply the change the color effect. Then I will grab the type tool, select Inter regular font, set the font size to 30, write 100 plus lessons and place it right here. As I said guys, you can find all the assets and the fonts that I use for this project in the link below. For the second one, we'll duplicate our text layer and write 200 GB plus assets instead. Perfect. With that done, we finished the main part. Now, before moving forward, let's quickly make our timeline more organized. I will group all these layers by changing their label colors so we can easily understand which layer belongs to which part of the scene. Let's also not forget to link all these layers to null 1. As you remember, we added some keyframes to give motion, so now we can move the time indicator to second 4 frame 16 and move the entire scene to the left like so. Then I'm gonna move the time indicator to second 6 and this time I will move them down in the scene. Now we can import our last image from the assets folder, which is a mailbox, and then apply the gradient ramp effect, set the first color to blue, adjust the scale amount to 93 and place it down here on the scene. Then I will grab the type tool, right client, choose the entire bold font, set the font size to 180 and center it on the scene right behind the mailbox. So let's go ahead and copy the gradient ramp effect from the mailbox and paste it onto our text layer. Then I will place the gradient ramp color points with blue at the top and white at the bottom of the text. After connecting these two layers to the null object and placing them right below the null object on the timeline, we can now decide which panel will show up when and add a keyframe. Now I'm gonna move the time indicator to second 1 frame 23 and move all the layers on the timeline that are not related of this part of the scene. So this part will show up right away. And then I will move these two layers right here on the timeline, and to make them appear more smoothly, I'm gonna add a Gaussian blur effect. Let's set the blurriness amount to 40, uncheck the repeat edge pixels option and add a keyframe when the playhead is here. And about 20 frames later, set the blurriness amount to 0. Then we're also gonna add opacity keyframe when the layer starts and set it to 0, and when the blurriness effect is gone, set it back to 100%. After copying all these keyframes and paste them to the icon as well, here is how it looks so far. With this in mind, it's time to create the lines. So I will grab the pen tool and draw a straight line between these two shape layers. Let's turn off the fill color, adjust the stroke width to 3 and set its color to black. Then I will open its shape layer settings on the timeline, open stroke settings and click this little plus icon right side of the taper. After that I will click add and add trim pad effect. Now if I play with the end amount inside of the trim pad settings, it can basically show up from up to down like so. So let's go ahead and add a keyframe to the end amount when the playhead is here. Press U to see only these settings, and let's not forget to connect this line layer to the null object, and about 15 frames before, which is when the second shape shows up, set the end value to 0. Of course it's gonna be right behind of these two shape layers, so I will place the line layer at the bottom of the other layers on the timeline, and we can rename it as a line. And this is how it looks so far. So let's go ahead and show up the next part of the scene at the second tree, and we're gonna copy the Gaussian blur and opacity keyframes from the first shape layer and paste it at the start like so. Then I'm gonna find the line layer at the timeline, duplicate it and move its keyframes and itself to second tree. This line is gonna be open when the next part of the scene show up. And to do this, we need to change its rotation and make it 90 degrees and place it right here. After that, our next part of the scene will showing up at the second 4 frame 16, which is where the null object keyframe is. As always, first I will copy the Gaussian blur and opacity layers that we created for the opener animation and paste them to these layers as well. Then we're gonna duplicate the vertical line layer, move it to the point right before the next part starts on the timeline, and duplicate the horizontal line as well. Then move it further to where the last line animation is finished and place it right here on the scene. And this is how it looks so far. We're almost done, and at the last part of the scene, as you can see, we have a text and a vector mail icon. So I will select these two layers on the timeline and add a position and opacity keyframe at the second 6, which is the final part. Then I will move the playhead to second 4 frame 20, move these layers to down until they are no longer visible, and at the middle of the movement, set the opacity amount to 0. We can trim the unnecessary parts of these layers and starts here. Finally, we finished the animation, and now we're gonna make all the movements much smoother. So let's select the null objects keyframes, right click and convert them to easy ease. And inside of the graph editor, I will adjust the first speed graph like this, so the motion starts much faster. And for the rest, let's select all of them and adjust their graph like this. And lastly, I will also convert these keyframes to easy ease and adjust their keyframe speed much faster. We can actually move the last keyframes 1 second further on the timeline, so they will appear much smoother like this. With this in mind, we finished our last SaaS explainer animation, and this is the final result.